This e-lecture is about money cues increase agency and decrease prosociality among children. Early signs of market mode behaviors by some people of which the name is very hard to pronounce, so you can just check it in the slides, and it's an article from 2016. Social interaction is necessary for people. This is how we perceive life in a positive way. The paper states that social interactions consist of different types. They distinguish two types of these: communal behaviors, which is about social sharing and caring, and market modes, which is about the self and helps to improve performance and motivation. The market mode is related to anything that has to do with trading, buying and selling, when money is a symbol or cue for this type of interaction. According to this paper, money could cue market mode behaviors even among young children, and which in turn will decrease communal interaction, generosity and helpfulness. So this paper investigates why market mode mentality decreases communal behaviors. The investigators think that market modes is about roles that make differences between people salient. However, communal behaviors are more motivated by perceived similarities between oneself and others. They predict that money cues would strengthen the market mode and weaken the communal behaviors. In this study, specifically, children are studied. But why would you study children? Children between 3 and 6 years old are a population that doesn't understand money, so logically, they wouldn't be influenced by the cue of money to present market mode behaviors. However, research shows that children between 4 and 6 years old do know that money is different from other objects. When a child is between 4 and 6, they're ready to be introduced to the basic topics of money. Money buys things, it can be earned, and some people have more than others. Games that use coins or paper currency can be a great way to make money seem less abstract and more concrete. Therefore, they could possibly be influenced or cued by money to activate the market mode behavior. This knowledge could only be learned by observation of other people like parents or family, but they are not using it themselves. Previous research mostly focused on adults, and they found effects for this cue for money. Therefore, it is not clear whether money has the same effect for these interactions when the knowledge of money is absent, and therefore this study focuses on children. In the study, they did 5 different experiments among children in Poland. First, they did a pilot study in the US, where they found that the longer children handled money, the less generous and helpful they were. Next, they stated that different experiments with diverse settings would suggest generalities in psychology of money when similar patterns are found. For each experiment, they used a different preschool to recruit children. They obtained consent from teachers and parents, and children were randomly assigned to the different conditions in each experiment. We will explain for each experiment the design, methods, and results. Experiment 1. In this experiment, it was expected that handling money versus a neutral condition would improve effort and performance. In the money condition, children had to sort 25 Polish coins in 3 categories, and in the neutral condition, children had to sort buttons of 3 different types of colors. After, they had to go to another room, and the children had to solve a paper labyrinth puzzle. They had access to an eraser to correct the work, and here the experiment told to finish the task, but they could stop every moment or get help from the experimenter. The process was video recorded, and the videos were watched by 8 different people and recorded the time children worked on a puzzle. The judges looked at whether kids worked until the preset time limit, which was coded binary and measured persistence. And the second one, they looked at whether children finished the puzzle, which was coded binary as well, and that one measured performance. They found a significant effect for persistence. 12.5% of the children in the money condition worked until the maximum time limit. None of the children in the neutral condition did. Performance mirrors persistence. Here was a significant effect of condition on correct completion. Among the children exposed to money, 21.9% completely finished the labyrinth, whereas 2.8% of the children in the neutral condition did. The effect of money priming on children's performance was fully mediated by their persistence, so children primed with money worked longer, which led to better solutions. Therefore, this experiment supports the prediction that money would cue behaviors related to the market mode, such as performance and motivation. Experiment 2. Experiment 2 is a replication of the first experiment, but with 2 improvements. The puzzle in the first experiment was actually for older children, so they used another one, which was a bit more simple. And secondly, they tested whether handling money would change the mood of children, which they didn't really expect based on previous research among adults. In this experiment, they had a similar procedure as in the first experiment. The difference is that kids had to report their mood after the sorting task, just before they started the puzzle, and they had to say whether they felt bad, so-so, or good. This puzzle, this time, was a jigsaw puzzle, and the experimenter timed how long children worked on the puzzle, and they still were able to stop any time or ask for help. Persistence led to the same result as they found in experiment 1, so children exposed to money persisted longer than in the neutral condition. For mood, there was no significant effect like they expected, and being exposed to money led to putting in extra effort on a difficult task. In the money condition, children's communal motivation decreases and they prefer to work alone and didn't really ask for help. Experiment 3. In these experiments, they tested whether money cues hinders communal behavior. They predict that handling money will reduce children's helpfulness, which is based on a study among adults. Second, they tested whether this effect was dependent on the knowledge of money. In experiment A, they had to sort 30 objects. In a money condition, it was money, and in a neutral condition, it were buttons. Then, in another room, they had to help an experimenter with readying a task for another child by bringing red crayons from a box in the corner, where more crayons would indicate higher helpfulness. Children in a money condition brought less crayons, which indicates a lower communal behavior. After 4 weeks, they tested the knowledge about the value of money among all children. They were asked which coin had a higher value, 2 or 5 Polish zloty, and the same was done for money bills. Almost 50% of the children failed to answer the question correctly. As expected, the knowledge did not moderate the effect of condition on helpfulness. Also, the money knowledge neither influenced the amount of crayons children picked up in the money condition itself. It suggests the power of the money cue. Experiment 3b, which is a experiment with 4 conditions, and they had to do a similar sorting game as in experiment 3a, but they focused more on the size or shape of the object. So a rectangular one, which replicates the banknotes, and the round one, which replicates the coins. After, they had to do the same thing, so they had to bring red crayons, and as expected, helpfulness was lower in the money condition. However, higher or lower value bills versus coins of money didn't really matter for the communal behavior. Concluding, handling money hinders communal behavior measured by helpfulness, and the value of money didn't matter. Experiment 4 is a replication of experiment 3, but included another variable of communal behavior, non-contingent giving. Among adults, reminders of money reduce donation of resources like time and money. In this study, they used stickers to simulate this effect. Here we have a short video to demonstrate children's knowledge about money.
Which do you want to do? Do you want to save it?
Share.
You want to share it? What would you do? You can either save it.
Oh my gosh, I know which one.
Which one? Tell me.
I'm under the table.
Spend.
Where are you, Vera?
I'm under the table.
Those of you who ducked out of econ lectures in school might sympathize with Vera's time out moment, but the professor, unfazed, pushed on.
So why do you want to spend it? What would you spend it on?
Minecraft toys.
Minecraft toys. Oh, interesting.
Whitley Wilkes decided to put $1 in each of the jars.
That's very interesting. Why did you do that?
Because I want to do all 3 in here.
In saving? Wow.
And what are you saving for?
College. College in high school.
This experiment, taking rewards, was measured. Money cues would stimulate a desire for rewards more than other conditions. They predict that children in a money condition would take more stickers and donate less. This experiment also measures the desirability explanation. The desirability of money could explain the effect on helpfulness, according to which the effect of exposure to money on helpfulness is due to the money's desirability. Therefore, they used candies, which measures this desirability, because most kids like candies more than money. If desirability of the prime is what reduces communal behavior, then children would have sorted candies should donate less than those who would have sorted money or buttons, so sorting candies would have stronger effects than money. In the experiment, they had to do a similar sorting task with the money, buttons, or candy. Then, children were shown different faces with different emotional expressions, and they were asked their mood and stayed with a face. And they asked, how do you feel right now? And how much did you like the sorting game? And they had to explain with one of the 7 different faces. Then they had to go to a different room with an experimenter, and they got 6 different Disney cartoon stickers. Children could take as much as they wanted. In this way, self-interest was measured, which is part of market mode behaviors, and the remaining stickers would be donated to other children. The experimenters predicted that children reminded of money would show weaker communality than the other children examined by the amount of stickers donated. The study finds a significant affective condition. The money prime condition donated a smaller portion and took more of the stickers. The candy and button condition did not differ significantly. Extreme selfishness was differing among conditions and was more frequent in the money condition. According to previous study, the longer children handled money, the more rewards they took and the less they donated, which is the same as what they found in this experiment. Even though sorting candy had a higher desirability, which wasn't the case for money and button, this was not an explanation for the effect. Mood mirrored the liking of the task. The mood was found to be better after sorting candies. The direction of the effect was opposite of the desirability effect, so children who felt happier were more pro-social. Therefore, the enhanced self-interest and reduced communality in the children who were primed with money was not due to the money producing positive effect. So, what is the general conclusion? You can conclude for all the experiment that money cues are consistent for market modes and inconsistent for communal modes, so they're more focused on performance and motivation. The found effects of handling money were not contingent on the money's value, the children's knowledge, or age. Alternate explanations are ruled out like mood, task engagement, and desirability. Why do market mode cues decrease communal behavior? Communal and market modes have different costs and benefits. The modes are 2 ends of a continuum. So communal interaction demands little mental processing and doesn't afford a high degree of social organization. However, market mode depends on many more cognitive operations and in return facilitates greater consistency in behavior. So what might future work test? Differences in social acumen could be relevant to study. Mental modes serve coordination and depend on people expecting what type of behaviors others will perform. This study is relevant for understanding mental modes in marketing and consumer behavior. So, what is the final conclusion? People are social and engage in beneficial interaction with strangers. Money facilitates those interactions. Specifically, market mode is a style of thought with informal guidelines, roles, and a situation when resources are being exchanged. This study is the first to demonstrate that children as young as 3 even connect money to market mode and show such behavior even though they don't really know what money is. Thank you.
Mike, come on! Mike, what is your deal, man?
Oh, come on, man. You've been riding me all day.
Mike, you're playing like Betty White out there.
That's not what your girlfriend said.
Baby! Eat a Snickers. Better?
Better. Hey! I'm all bad!
That hurt.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers satisfies.
What we see here is a typical example of someone who lost their self-control and was clearly in need of a Snicker. In this e-lecture, we will discuss the concept of self-control in relation to money and consumerism. Self-control is the ability of the self to alter its own responses. It involves overriding habitual or more desired responses in order to experience benefit in the long run. Self-control is very relevant to consumer behavior, since almost every consumer exercises a form of self-control when it comes to consuming goods and services. Consumers play a vital role in the economic system of a nation. This is also why consumer behavior is heavily researched. Consumer behavior is also researched since it is important for increasing the sales of products. In this e-lecture, we focus on an article written by Helen Boucher and Monte Kofos titled "The Idea of Money Counteracts Ego Depletion Effects." In this study, the authors aim to investigate whether money, or the idea of money, can influence self-control. A greater insight in the workings of self-control can deepen our understanding of consumer behavior. Currently known about this topic is that self-control fails in part because it draws on a limited resource. One act of self-control can deplete the resource, which makes subsequent acts of self-control more difficult. This is called ego depletion. A wide range of activities can cause this ego depletion. For instance, controlling one's thoughts or attention, restraining an impulse, and making choices all contribute to depletion of the resource. Ego depletion can have various consequences. For example, inappropriate sexual behavior, procrastination, impulse buying, less persistence, and poorer performance on tasks requiring intelligent thought. Or, as we saw in the Snickers commercial, aggression. Several buffers for this ego depletion have been identified so far. For instance, self-control appears to depend on the glucose level in the blood, and so, acts of self-control reduce glucose levels. Therefore, drinking beverages containing glucose can counteract ego depletion. Another possible way to buffer ego depletion is inducing positive mood. This can be induced in various ways. For example, getting an unexpected gift or watching a funny video. Furthermore, money also appears to serve as a buffer for ego depletion. Previous research suggests that money can serve as an incentive to exert self-control. Therefore, when people are given money for a certain task, let's say for putting their hand in extremely cold water, they will persist longer, even when they are fatigued from previous acts of self-control, compared to when they are not offered any money as an incentive. Interestingly, the mere idea of money also appears to have a buffering effect on ego depletion. In previous research, it was found that when participants were reminded of money, they tended to persist longer on difficult and even impossible tasks without asking for assistance. They were also found to be less helpful and preferred to work alone as well as spend their free time alone. An explanation for these findings may be that the idea of money is associated with feelings of strength, self-efficacy, and confidence. This could be because money allows people to achieve their goals and solve their problems without having to be concerned with other people's opinions. Moreover, the idea of money was also found to be associated with a decrease in social and physical pain. Research demonstrated that in a study where the participants had to put their hands in very hot water, they reported feeling less physical pain compared to a control group. The current study compares 4 groups in a 2x2 design, whereby participants were either in a depleted or non-depleted condition and were either money primed or neutrally primed. The authors proposed 2 hypotheses. Based on previous studies, the first hypothesis was that the non-depleted money-primed group would exert more self-control than both the non-depleted neutral-primed group and the depleted money-primed group, whereby these 2 last groups would exert more self-control than the depleted neutral-primed group. Based on previous studies which have suggested that while money does buffer against ego depletion, the authors also hypothesized that the non-depleted neutral primed group would demonstrate the same self-control as the non-depleted money primed group. These two groups would show more self-control than the depleted money primed group, and the depleted money primed group should show more self-control than depleted neutral primed group. The relevance of this paper is to further expand on existing knowledge by investigating ego depletion effects and how money can buffer these ego depletion effects. As for the research design of this study, they used an experimental design and tested whether the idea of money would buffer ego depletion effects across 2 experiments using 2 different measures of self-control. For experiment 1, the participants were 63 students from Bates College who participated to fulfill their psychology course requirements and were randomly assigned to a condition in a 2x2 factorial design. The groups consisted of the following conditions: either depleted or non-depleted self-control, and either money-primed or neutral-primed. They were explained that they would be participating in 2 studies. For study 1, the participants were given a paragraph of dense text and instructed to cross out every letter E. Afterwards, they were given additional text and in the non-depletion condition instructed to continue to cross out every E. But in the depletion condition, told to cross out every E that followed a complicated rule. Consequently, they were either money or neutral primed during a sentence descrambling task. Finally, they completed the positive and negative affect schedule, a common measure of mood. For study 2, the participants completed the Stroop task, in which they had to say out loud the color of ink in which words representing colors were printed, as quickly as possible. They first completed a congruent set where the word and ink color matched, and then completed an incongruent set in which the words did not match the color of the ink, representing another measure of self-control. The results showed that neither the main effects for the depletion condition nor the priming condition were significant. However, the data showed significant results among depleted participants, whereby those in the money prime group did better than a neutral prime group. Thus, participants who were depleted of self-control resources, but who were then reminded of money, performed better on the Stroop task than depleted participants who were reminded of neutral concepts. Furthermore, the mood scores revealed no significant effects. The second experiment was intended to replicate the results of experiment 1, but with different operationalizations of self-control. Furthermore, they also looked at the possible mechanisms underlying the buffering effect of activating the concept of money, namely, increased motivation, reduction of fatigue, reduction of subjective difficulty, and increased effort. For this experiment, another 44 students from Bates College participated to either fulfill their psychology course requirements or to receive a reward of $5 and were again randomly assigned to conditions in a 2x2 factorial design. There were again 2 studies, with the first one being a thought listing task whereby participants in the non-depletion condition were told that they could think about anything they liked. But in the depletion condition, they were told not to think about a white bear. Since suppressing a thought requires effort, having participants suppress a thought is another means to manipulate ego depletion. Afterwards, they were asked to rate the task and were given the sentence descrambling task, which was also used in experiment 1. For the second study, they were given 5 minutes to complete as many of 15 anagrams as they could, whereby the anagrams varied in difficulty. The task involved solving difficult anagrams whereby it is common for some participants to give up, making this another measure of self-control. The data showed that participants who had to exert self-control by suppressing thoughts of a white bear, but were then reminded of money, solved more anagrams than depleted participants reminded of neutral concepts. Interestingly, the idea of money did not impart extra self-control ability among non-depleted participants. The results regarding the possible mechanisms showed that only reduction of subjective difficulty and increased effort presented significant findings. Fatigue demonstrated marginal findings. Thus, depleted participants who were reminded of money reported that they found the anagrams less difficult, were marginally less tired, and exerted less effort. Furthermore, a regression analysis revealed that reduced difficulty and effort mediated the relationship between the conditions and performance. Thus, these factors are suggested to be the buffers by which money reminders affect ego depletion. This analysis also demonstrated that fatigue had no effect on the explained variance. Jumping back, the aim of this study was to contribute to the existing knowledge regarding self-control exertion. The authors tested whether the idea of money would buffer ego depletion effects across 2 experiments. First of all, based on previous research that suggests that money promotes strength and self-sufficiency irrespective of past self-control exertion, the authors hypothesized that the non-depleted money prime group should demonstrate better self-control than both the non-depleted neutral prime and non-depleted money prime groups. These last 2 groups should both exert better self-control than the depleted neutral prime one. This would suggest the buffering effect. Alternatively, the authors hypothesized that the non-depleted money prime group performs similarly to both the non-depleted neutral prime and depleted money prime groups. In this case, the depleted neutral prime group should do worse than the non-depleted neutral prime group and the depleted money prime one. Across the 2 experiments, there was strong evidence found for the hypothesis that money buffers the ego depletion effect. In experiment 1, the depleted group that was reminded of money performed better on the task than depleted participants with neutral cues. In experiment 2, the depleted group that was reminded of money solved more anagrams than depleted participants reminded of neutral concepts. Interestingly, the idea of money did not give extra self-control to non-depleted participants. Money prime non-depleted participants did no better than neutral prime non-depleted participants. Rather, the effect was only evident among the depleted group. These findings are in line with past research on examining other interventions for ego depletion effects. As mentioned earlier, previous research have identified several buffers for ego depletion. For example, having glucose added to one's bloodstream and various psychological interventions such as imparting motivation and engaging in self-affirmation. Additionally, this study provides evidence that the idea of money served to reduce the subjective difficulty of the second self-control task, in this case solving anagrams, and the effort participants had to exert while completing it. However, a limitation of this study is that questions assessing subjective difficulty and effort were given after participants' anagrams task, which may have affected the way they rated the anagram's difficulty and effort. Moreover, it seems that manipulating participants' efficacy expectations before they solve anagrams can buffer against ego depletion effects. On that account, the authors recommend for future research to test whether money priming increases feelings of self-efficacy before completion of the second self-control task. In addition, the authors have a few suggestions for future research. They note that it would be interesting to identify other effects of activating the concept of money and to speculate about how the current research applies in real-world settings. So, how does this study help us understand consumer behavior more generally? It is fascinating that the mere idea of money was enough to counteract ego depletion. The promise of money can serve as a powerful incentive for people to persevere on effortful tasks or otherwise do things they would rather not. The fact that the idea of money was enough to have the same buffering effects speaks to what money means to people. The ability to buy the goods and services one wants, and in general, to live the kind of life one desires without worries. To end this e-lecture, we would like to end with an interesting takeaway message. Self-control is essential for functioning successfully in society. Without self-control, people would give in to whatever immediate urge struck them without thinking of the possible consequences. Good self-control is precarious in that it depends on something that is so quickly depleted. Thus, identifying ways to counteract this effect is vital for helping people achieve their goals and live harmoniously with each other. Whether it may be by reminding yourself of money, thinking about an important value, enjoying a laugh, or treating yourself to that bar of chocolate.